Warning! Kinda Murdery contains adult themes, explicit language, and descriptions of violence. It is not suitable for anyone, and we recommend you stop listening now.
True crime with a dash of the paranormal, the garish, the strange, and the darkly comic. I'm Zevon Odelberg, and you've found your way to Kinda Murdery, a place that means more than just murder. It's my very own pocket dimension, home to a curated collection of bizarre and compelling stories. The unsolved, the unsettling, and the unbelievable. I cover it all, just so long as it's kinda murdery. I'm your host, Zevon Odelberg. Welcome to Kinda Murdery. Thank you for taking the time to join me for another deep dive into the darker side of human nature. First off, San Diego Comic-Con was a blast. It was great to see some of you there. Special shout out to Gabrielle Pelletier from Premium Collectible Studios and to Jesse Abarques. Gabrielle, it was great to meet you. That American Psycho figure transcended kinda murdery and was absolutely super duper murdery. Jesse, thank you for helping me and my family get our Naruto cosplay pictures. Your Gambit was awesome. If you're into cosplay, follow Jesse on Instagram at itscreamsjesse1. That's ITSCREAMSJESSIE1. As always, if you have a disability story you'd like to share, or if there's a particular kinda murdery story you want me to tell, reach out to the show, kindamurdery@gmail.com. or at Kinda Murdery on social media. So listen guys, Kinda Murdery is doing something pretty fun this week, and today we're doing our first ever two-part story with The Magic Bullet Murder of Rheta Wynekoop. Part 1 dropped today, Thursday, July 28th, 2022, and Part 2 will come out this Sunday, July 31st. So again, to hear the second part of The Magic Bullet Murder of Rheta Wynekoop, make sure to tune in this Sunday, July 31st. All right, it's time to dive into The Magic Bullet Murder of Rheta Wynekoop. Here we go. When Thomas J. Ahern, undertaker, rang the doorbell of the dreary old house at 3406 West Monroe Street, Chicago, around 9:30 p.m. on the night of November 21st, 1933, it was without any idea of why he was there, except that over the telephone he had been asked by his old friend, Dr. Alice Lindsay Wynekoop, to come to her house at once. She would explain when she saw him, she had added. The undertaker was somewhat surprised when the door was opened to him by a petite young woman with carroty red hair. It was most unusual for Dr. Catherine Wynekoop to be in her mother's house of an evening, since she herself, at 24, was on night duty as resident surgeon in the children's division of the Cook County Hospital. In her solemn face and tightly compressed lips, the undertaker read trouble, and her first words confirmed it. "Something has happened. Mother will see you in the library." She led the way down a dim, ill-lit hallway, permeated by the musty atmosphere that is found in all old houses, to where a light shone faintly through an open doorway. At the threshold, Ahern paused and shot a questioning glance at the two persons beyond it. The tall, spare woman, gray with her 62 years, whose summons to this place he had obeyed, and the equally gray but tiny woman who fluttered around the doctor's chair like an agitated sparrow. In their faces he saw again the signs of trouble he had read in the visage of Dr. Catherine Wynekoop, and he wondered what was amiss. He included both women in his bow. "Good evening, Doctor." "Good evening, Miss Hennessy." Dr. Wynekoop said, "Good evening," and indicated a chair, but Enid Hennessy, veteran teacher of John Marshall High School and known throughout the neighborhood as intimate friend and confidant of the old woman in whose home she had lodged for a decade, bobbed her head and seemed unable to speak. For a moment there was a tense silence as Dr. Wynekoop peered at the undertaker with penetrating blue eyes that age had not dimmed. Then, "I watched Dr. Berger perform an operation this morning," she said, "and when I came home, Rheta was here." "You've met Rheta, Mr. Ahern?" "My son Earl's wife. I sent her to do the marketing, and when she came back, I went out myself intending to buy a few things, but walked around and looked in shop windows, so that it was after 5 o'clock before I returned, and Rheta was gone." "She's missing?" asked Ahern. Dr. Wynekoop refused to be hurried. "Rheta said that she might like to go downtown to get some music, and I told her that if she saw a picture show she thought she'd like, she might go in and see it. Naturally, I suppose she'd done just that, so I went to the kitchen and started dinner. When Enid here," she indicated the schoolteacher, "came in at about 6 o'clock, we decided not to wait for Rheta, so we sat down and ate." Ahern, wondering where this was all leading, interrupted her. "What do you want of me?" Again, his question went unanswered as Dr. Wynekoop continued. "Enid went to the drugstore to get some medicine for me, and when she got back, we sat and talked, and still Rheta did not come. So I called Mrs. Duncan next door, and she said she had not seen Rheta after 3 o'clock when they met on the street as Rheta was coming home from marketing. About 8:30 I went to my office, in the basement, you know, and I found Rheta down there. She was dead, Mr. Ahern." "Dead? Come, I'll show you." Dr. Wynekoop pushed her gaunt frame up from the chair and turned to a stairway at the rear of the library. Ahern, closely following with Dr. Catherine Wynekoop and Enid Hennessy, saw from the head of the steps that lights were burning below stairs. Through the office and to the door of an adjoining room, Dr. Wynekoop led the way. Then she pushed open the door and stepped aside. Upon a surgeon's examination table lay the blanketed form, and Ahern approached it with professional interest. Dr. Wynekoop followed and silently watched as he pulled the blanket down. Rheta Wynekoop lay upon her left side, her auburn-topped head pillowed upon her left hand, and even in death she had not lost her beauty. About her lips were tiny abrasions, which may have been either scratches or burns. "What was the cause of death?" asked Ahern. Still silent, Dr. Wynekoop stretched out a hand and pulled the blanket down further, exposing the dead girl's back, and it startled the undertaker a bit to discover that apparently she was unclothed. Then his eye was caught and held by something else. A red-rimmed hole in the region to the left of her spine, and about it the telltale marks of gunpowder. "Why, that looks like a bullet wound," he exclaimed. "Exactly so. Rheta was shot." "Well, who? When? Why?" Questions fairly tumbled from the undertaker's lips. Dr. Wynekoop shook her head. "I don't know. It must have happened when I was out. Her neck was stiff when I found her. Rigor mortis had already set in." "Well, where are the police? Haven't you notified them?" "No," said Dr. Wynekoop sharply. "We don't want any publicity about this." "But this is murder," Ahern said sternly. "Of course the police must be notified. Where is the telephone?" 5 minutes later, policemen Arthur Marsh and Walter Kelly, notified by radio, arrived at the house in a patrol car. Hard on their heels came other policemen, supervising Captain John Steig, Captain Thomas Duffy, commanding Fillmore District in which the crime occurred, with his lieutenant Sam Peterson, Chief of Detectives William Shoemaker and his deputy, William V. Blall, Lieutenant Otto Erelson, and his homicide squad, and a score of plainclothes men. And, a short while later, a host of newspaper reporters and photographers. Thus was the curtain lifted upon Chicago's most sensational real-life drama in years, one that was to keep the nation on tiptoe with its bewildering, kaleidoscopic developments. The setting was one to delight a writer of mystery thrillers, an austere and somber brick dwelling of the kind fashionable 30 years ago, tightly wedged in between its neighbors, weather-beaten and uninviting from the outside. Inside, a rambling place of 2 stories, attic, and English basement. 16 big, high-ceiling rooms furnished with ponderous pieces of antiquated style, heavy drapes and curtains, and the accumulation of years. Dark, dreary, and gloomy. It had even a secret entrance, a sliding panel, a concealed button. And the cast of characters? Well, they fitted the setting as a glove fits the hand. Dr. Alice Lindsay Wynekoop, in her younger days, not only had been renowned in her profession, even outstripping her husband, Dr. Frank E. Wynekoop, of a family noted in medical circles, but a brilliant leader of her sex in other lines. Her interests, as revealed by the yellowed newspaper clippings, had covered a wide range, from better babies to woman suffrage, from the ethics of marriage to why middle-aged husbands go wrong, and particularly a devotion to little children which had turned her into a virtual one-woman home-finding agency. Then, around 1918, a serious operation led to her abrupt withdrawal from all that had absorbed her before. Her name ceased to appear on programs of medical meetings, parent-teacher conventions, political equality meetings, and infant welfare sessions. It dropped from the public prints. Her private practice and her family became her sole interests. Many things came to sadden her. Walker, her elder son, head of a label company, had left her to marry and make his home in Glencoe, a suburb. Her only daughter, Catherine, with a brilliant future in the Wynekoop profession, found little time to visit her mother. Earl, her baby, had been a disappointment. He had started upon the medical path too, but had forsaken it for aviation, and although he held a pilot's license, put it to no good use. In all his 28 years, he had never held a paying job. His time was devoted to chasing will-o'-the-wisps, which he never caught. Death's hand had been laid heavily upon the old house, too. Dr. Wynekoop's husband died in 1929. Mary Louise Wynekoop, an adopted daughter she had raised from babyhood, passed away in March 1933. Augustus L. Hennessy, who had come with his schoolteacher daughter Enid to live with the Wynekoops a decade before, followed in May, and in August, Katie M. Porter, 67-year-old spinster, long another crony of the doctor, died as well. Enid Hennessy had stayed on in a similar role after her father's death, a buxom little bespectacled woman scarcely 5 feet tall who bounced along in a sprightly manner. Beloved by her pupils, and, surprisingly, Enid was the little mother of the school football team. In the rear of the basement dwelt John Van Pelt. Like the two women, he was well past his prime. A painter by trade, he had retrograded into an odd jobs man. He had come into the household several years before when he had done a job of painting for Dr. Wynekoop, who found herself unable to pay him and offered him a room. It was only curtailed off space in the boiler room, but Van Pelt accepted, and below stairs became his domain. It was into this setting and among these people that Rheta Wynekoop, daughter of an Indianapolis flour merchant, had been thrust at 18 as Earl Wynekoop's bride. A talented violinist just a year out of high school where her record was excellent, she had caught Earl's eye when she played a medical sorority dance in her home city to which he had driven his sister. Over the objections of her family, Rheta had followed him to Chicago and married him and gone to live with him in the dreary old Wynekoop home where, 4 years later, death was to come to her in violent form. Right from the start, police swarming into the old house to investigate the killing found things to confound and baffle them. The slender body of the dead girl on the table was garbed only in stockings and an underslip which had been pulled down to her waist. Her other clothing and her shoes lay in a heap at the foot of the table. Her right hand grasped a towel which, although damp, had no odor when examined. Mysterious. On the table, some 2 feet behind her head and concealed by a piece of medicated gauze, was found a .32 caliber pistol. It showed signs of cleaning and oiling, and its barrel had the acrid odor of recently discharged gunpowder. Strikingly significant things manifested themselves immediately. 3 cartridges had been fired in the pistol, but Rheta had only been shot once. None of the girl's garments had been pierced by the fatal bullet. Obviously, she had been unclad when she was shot. Captain Stieg, taking command of the investigation, sent his men to go over the house from top to bottom, and then, with other ranking officers, began to question Dr. Wynekoop, her daughter Catherine, and Enid Hennessy. Dr. Catherine Wynekoop's story was brief. She had been on duty at the hospital when her mother had telephoned her to come home at once, that something dreadful had happened. Told what that something was, the younger woman had rushed to the house. Much telephoning had ensued. To a Dr. Frank Chauvet, old family friend who was treating a patient and could not come. At his suggestion to Dr. George Berber, who that very morning had performed an operation with the assistance of Dr. Wynekoop, and who reached the house after the police. To Bernardine H. Gardner, Rhetta's father in Indianapolis. To Walker Wynekoop in his Glencoe home. To Ahern, the undertaker. To old Dr. Wynekoop's brothers and sisters downstate. But not the police, she was reminded. The undertaker attended to that, she replied. And your brother Earl? He left the city 4 days ago, last Friday, with Stanley Young, a friend, to drive west and take colored movies of the Grand Canyon for a railroad. Dr. Catherine said she had not seen Rhetta's body until it was shown to Ahern, the undertaker. Enid Hennessy, not only reluctant but semi-defiant, insisted that she had known nothing of this. She had been in bed before the discovery of the body by Dr. Wynekoop, had not learned of the tragedy until, a few minutes before Ahern's arrival, she had been awakened and told what had happened by Dr. Catherine Wynekoop. I did not come straight home from school as usual today, she said. Dr. Wynekoop had asked me to attend to a little business downtown, and it was almost 6 o'clock before I got there. Dr. Wynekoop was getting supper, although Rheta usually did that. She told me Rheta had gone downtown and not returned. We sat down and ate alone. Dr. Wynekoop put food on a plate and covered it to keep it warm for Rheta. Then she asked me to go to a drugstore and get some sedative tablets because she had not been sleeping well. I was gone for about 3/4 of an hour. Rheta had not come in, so the doctor and I sat in the library and talked. What was the subject of your conversation? A book I had taken out of the library for her, Strange Interlude, and another book, The Forsyth Saga. We discussed the psychology of the characters. Then Dr. Wynekoop telephoned Mrs. Duncan in the next house to ask if she had seen Rheta after they had met on the street in the afternoon. After that, not feeling well, I said good night and went to my room. Upon old Dr. Wynekoop, the police centered their questions. She repeated to them the story of her day's activity, which she had told to Ahern. Why were you in the basement at the time you found the body? She was asked. Miss Hennessy had complained of indigestion. I went to my office to get some medicine for her. It was in the room adjoining the office proper. I pushed open the door, switched on the lights, and saw Rheta on the table. You moved the body? No. I put my hand on her neck. It was stiff. I knew she was dead. I pulled down the blanket, saw she had been shot, covered her up, and rushed back upstairs to telephone Catherine to come home. I was so upset I didn't know what else to do until she got here. I just sat down, too stunned to even think of calling Miss Hennessy. You hadn't seen the pistol? No. I may as well tell you, though, it's mine. It's been around the house for years. Some time ago, my son Earl had it cleaned and oiled and loaded and gave it to me for protection, because while he was working at the World's Fair, he slept down there and couldn't come home nights. I don't know how to fire a pistol even, but to please him, I took it and put it in a drawer in my desk. I looked a few minutes ago, and $6 bills that were also in the drawer are missing. See? That's the piece of brown paper in which I had folded them. In the drawer also was a box of cartridges to fit the fatal pistol. Its appearance was new. 5 cartridges of the original 50 were missing, and 2 old ones had replaced them. You think then that a thief shot Rheta? Dr. Wynekoop was asked. Somebody looking for drugs, agreed Dr. Wynekoop. Twice before, someone got into the house and took narcotics and small amounts of money. You reported that to the police? Well, no, the amounts involved were small. It didn't seem worth it. Doctor, how do you account for the fact that Rheta was undressed when she was shot? Well, said Dr. Wynekoop slowly, the only theory upon which I can explain it is this. Rheta was much worried over her health. Every day she went downstairs into my office where there were scales, took off her clothes and weighed herself. Perhaps she did so this afternoon while I was out, and was undressed when she was surprised by a thief and shot. You think, then, that afterwards he picked her up, put her on the table, and covered her with a blanket? Well, perhaps remorse seized him and he tried to do something for her, put her on the table and tucked the blanket around her, and then saw that she was beyond help. As a physician, you should know that a person who is shot bleeds freely. There was no blood on the body or on the blanket. Sometimes a wound bleeds internally and hardly any seeps to the outside. A far-fetched theory that, and one to which, discovering that both front and rear doors of the basement were locked and that nowhere was there a single sign of a struggle, the police did not subscribe to for the moment. They led the three women on to a talk of the slain girl, carrying on the accepted police formula of seeking clues to the everyday life of the murder victim. The picture, which perhaps unwittingly was drawn, was that of a mouse-like creature, a reader of, quote, heavy stuff, fond of her violin, but dependent upon her mother-in-law for money to buy music. Virtually the household drudge, a Cinderella, worrying over her health, but sick more of mind than of body, crushed by the knowledge that the brilliant Wynekoops were inclined to look down upon her, that even her ne'er-do-well husband felt superior to her, that the fire of her romance with him had burned itself out almost before the honeymoon ended, that she must continue to lie in the thorny bed that she made for herself, since her marriage against her family's wishes would make it too humiliating for her to return home. Eventually, when the detectives continued sweeping through the house and poking into dark and dusty corners, and while they were making their reports to superiors and orders were flowing over the telephone to check this thing and that thing, a policeman standing guard over the room where Dr. Wynekoop, her daughter, and Enid Hennessy had finally been left alone, made a discovery. Enid Hennessy was listening over an extension telephone to everything that was going out and reporting it to Dr. Wynekoop. "These policemen will bungle this just like they did that Loeb Leopold case," she said. "You know they couldn't solve that themselves." Was she expressing fear that the slaying would not be solved? Or hope? The police leaned to the belief that the school teacher, Miss Hennessy, knew a great deal more than she had told. Captain Steig openly charged that she was trying to impede the detectives and hamper the investigation, and threatened to have her locked up. Whereupon, apparently frightened, she became more informative. She admitted for one thing that apparently Rhetta's failure to come home in time to cook supper had irritated Dr. Wynekoop. At least that the doctor had said that, from now on, Rheta can go her way, and I'll go mine. She admitted for another that after arising from the supper table, she had been surprised to discover Rhetta's purse and the hat and coat which she ordinarily wore when going anywhere but in the immediate neighborhood was lying on a table in the hallway. "I called Dr. Wynekoop's attention to it," she added, "and the doctor said Rheta must have worn her brown coat." The police had heard of that brown coat from another source. Mrs. Vera Duncan, the next-door neighbor whom Dr. Wynekoop had telephoned to ask if she had seen Rheta, had mentioned it. Mrs. Duncan, doing her own marketing, had met the younger woman a few blocks from their adjoining homes and had commented upon the fact that Rheta had varied her usual routine of going marketing late in the day. "Dr. Wynekoop is going out this afternoon and wants me to stay home in case there are any calls," Rheta explained. "It is such a nice day, and you're through shopping so early I thought you might like to go for a walk with me," Mrs. Duncan told her. "Not unless the doctor changes her mind about going out." "Well, if she does, ask her if you can join me," Miss Duncan said as they parted. That, so far as the detectives assigned to canvass the neighborhood could learn, was the last time that anyone who knew her, except Dr. Wynekoop, had seen Rheta alive. At that time, she had been wearing the same outer garments which had been found beside the table where her body lay, and her brown coat. The coat assumed importance when the police found it under a pile of newspapers in a dark closet opening into the room where the body had been found. Who had tried to hide it there? Rheta herself? Why? The slayer? Again, why? It bore neither bullet hole nor bloodstains. Other, more significant discoveries quickly thrust the coat into the background, however. The doctor's desk had yielded some interesting papers. 2 were unmailed letters. One, addressed to a Washington man, apparently an old family friend, expressed a wish that he were here at hand to advise on the, quote, "terrible situation which confronts this family." It hinted, too, that Dr. Wynekoop leaned to a belief in spiritualism, since it spoke of going alone into her office, recreating her dead husband, and having a long talk with him. "That is a purely personal matter," Dr. Wynekoop declared, "and it has nothing to do with this affair. It was written months ago." The police did not press her. They were far more interested in another missive, headed Sunday night, and written in pencil in a feminine hand. "Precious," it read, "I'm choked. You are gone. You have called me up, and after 10 minutes or so I called and called. No answer. Maybe you are sleeping. You need to be, but I want to hear your voice again tonight. I would give anything I have to spend an hour in real talk with you tonight, and I cannot. Good night." Dr. Wynekoop flared up when she was asked about what the police insisted upon calling a, quote, love note. She declared that it was not a love letter, in the accepted sense of the word. The police refused to be put off. They demanded to know to whom it had been written. In the end, the doctor capitulated. "To my son," she said defiantly. "Your son?" "To Earl. Just the letter of a mother to a son whom she loves." "Have you notified him of his wife's death?" Dr. Wynekoop said she did not know where to reach him and reminded them they had been told that Earl and Stanley Young had left for the West to take pictures of the Grand Canyon. "We're not forgetting it," she was told. "He left Friday of last week, and this is Tuesday?" "Yes." Instantly, there was laid before her a telegram dated that very day and sent from Peoria, Illinois. "Stanley's having domestic trouble and leaving for home or somewhere." It was signed, Earl. "We've checked on this telegram," Captain Steig said. "An effort was made to deliver it to you at 4:45 this afternoon, but although the lights were burning both in the basement and on the first floor, there was no answer to the messenger's ring at the doorbell." "I told you, I did not get home from my walk until 5 o'clock. "You received it at 7:45 p.m. tonight?" "Yes." "Well, neither you nor Miss Hennessy mentioned it." "Enid was at the drugstore when it came. She did not know about it." "Well, you deliberately let us be misled about your son. You chose to let us believe he was 4 days' driving distance from Chicago, when you knew that this afternoon he was in Peoria, only 170 miles away. Why?" "I didn't see it had anything to do with Rhetta's death. The telegram was sent, as you see, at 3:47 this afternoon. You know from Mrs. Duncan that Rheta was on the street at 3 o'clock. "Well, we also know from Mrs. Duncan that a week ago, standing on the back porch, you told her that you were going to send Rheta on a long trip." "What did you mean by that?" "That Rheta might go with Earl and Stanley Young on the trip to Arizona." "You yourself and others have told us that Rheta and Earl were not happily married, had not, in fact, lived as man and wife since a few months after they were married. It hardly seems logical that you would accompany him on a trip intended to last some time when they had little to do with each other at home." "Earl would have done what I told him. Rhetta's health was bad, the trip would have done her good, and we Wynekoops take care of our own." "What did the telegram mean to you?" "That Stanley Young's family troubles had delayed the boys on their trip, bringing it to an end at Peoria." "We've checked on Stanley. He's not married. He has no family, therefore no domestic troubles. That telegram states a lie. Why?" Dr. Wynekoop said that she did not know. The suggestion that it might have been sent with the intention of serving as an alibi for her son's whereabouts at the time of his wife's murder, carrying in it the information that he knew the murder was to take place, enraged her. "Earl doesn't need any alibi," she said. "He was not happy with Rheta, but murder is not the way out he would choose. You will find that he actually was in Peoria when the telegram was sent." Discovery that the police suspected her son of having guilty knowledge of the killing was not the only shock for Dr. Wynekoop. Working swiftly, efficiently, detectives had learned that after leaving Chicago for the West on Friday, Earl and Stanley Young had experienced car trouble a few miles out of Chicago. They had returned that same afternoon and had remained in the city until Tuesday morning, the day of the killing, before starting out again. But Earl had not gone to his home. They sprang it on Dr. Wynekoop unexpectedly and taxed her with having seen her son over the weekend, with having written what they continued to call the love letter after seeing him on Sunday. In admitting that she had seen Earl, and without his wife's knowledge, Dr. Wynekoop also said that she had seen him on Monday night, that he had telephoned her to meet him at 67th and Kedzie Streets, several miles from her home, and that she had gone there by streetcar and they sat for at least 2 hours and talked. "Why didn't he come home and talk to you there?" she was asked. And now we've reached the end of part 1 of The Magic Bullet Murder of Rheta Wynekoop. Tune in Sunday night for part 2. I can't wait to join you there. Again, this is a two-parter. Part 1 came out Thursday. Part 2 will drop this Sunday, July 31st. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Zevon Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery. If you've enjoyed today's Kinda Murdery, please tell your friends and family. Tell strangers. Leave a review. It's the best way to ensure that I can keep telling that special brand of bizarre and terrible tales that you'll only find here on Kinda Murdery.